I guess the only things I really wanted to discuss today, personally, I mean, I'd be happy to discuss whatever you guys wanted to bring up in the chat. Um, but I wanted to discuss this concept of how to frame the debate against anti-Chinese propaganda, anti-China propaganda. Um, and I am a little concerned, and I know I've already brought this up many times on here and on Twitter and other places, but I'm already slightly concerned at some of the things I'm seeing leftists, anti-imperialists saying in response to the Uyghur stories, because clearly they're propaganda meant for Western audiences, meant to create, enough energy where liberals, specifically, I think more the liberal-minded people will be like, "This is outrageous. We need to do something about this." But I'm slightly concerned because I already see leftists and anti-imperialists going too hard on the idea that China is fighting a war on terror, and that's why they would need to be rounding people up. Now, I obviously have a fundamental problem with that prism of having this debate in. However, I am very mindful of the fact, and also currently doing more research about sort of the Turkmenistan, like the militia forces that are close to China's border, that are in Afghanistan, some of those people that have been U.S. sponsored in the past. And I am mindful of that that's a real thing. That on some level, China, at least the state officials, believe that the U.S. is trying to create some kind of proxy destabilization attempt. That's their belief. And I think that belief is based in a lot of truth. However, the problem comes in when I think the problem is, I guess I'll take it back to Syria. So with Assad in Syria, my problem wasn't the full stop 100% anti-U.S. intervention position was my position in Syria. My problem came in when people who are trying to defend Syria against regime change or against U.S. intervention would essentially repeat sort of the Syrian state line on their version of the war on terror. And when I say that, I mean believing that every person that Assad's Syrian army killed or that his forces killed were somehow terrorists or were somehow jihadis. Because I've long had an issue with this use of language, obviously, since the war on terror. So what I'm trying to say is I think that we have a new opportunity here to not engage in this debate through the same rhetorical prism that anti-imperialists fell into with Syria. And I'm not saying that they should do this simply to avoid being called an Assadist. So whatever that would be called with China, like a China apologist. I don't give a shit if anyone wants to call someone an Assadist or not. I mean, obviously it's a smear. I do give a shit because it's a weaponized smear. However, I'm not making this argument saying that we should do this and engage in the debate this way to prevent being called China apologists. Far from it, actually. What I'm saying is from a sort of a moral framework and just sort of a logical anti-imperialist framework. I think you get into dicey territory when you're mixing together any form of war on terror rhetoric with a position of anti-imperialism. Because fundamentally, terrorism is not something that can be prevented. That's sort of the whole point of a legitimately real terrorist attack, is that it's usually done on a soft target. It's usually done completely by surprise, unexpectedly. So based on just that idea of terrorism, sort of as how we understand it, I think that it's just logically really problematic to believe, and I don't know if this was people who were born after 9/11 or people who didn't live in the United States and saw how obvious the war on terror propaganda was here. Maybe it's people, who didn't experience that. But what I'm saying is the idea, as soon as the United States introduced the premise of preventing terrorism, from day one, I knew it was a false premise. It doesn't matter to me what other states, whether it be Syria, Russia, I'm just going to point to the ones that, do need some buffering against U.S. intervention. It doesn't matter what state uses that logic. If any state toes the logic that we need to do something to prevent terrorism, I just see that as a blanket open door for them to just basically be a little more heavy-handed with their law enforcement in general. It means absolutely nothing to me, actually. So besides that, I think for any leftist or anti-imperialist, to play into even that framing device, that there needs to be some kind of prevention of terrorism, I think is problematic in and of itself. Because I think just fundamentally you cannot prevent it. That's the whole point of terrorism. If a crazy person or a terrorist wanted to do something and hurt a bunch of innocent people, they pretty much always can. That's the unstable, sort of chaotic world that we live in. That's the nature of humanity. What are you going to do to stop someone from committing a crazy violent act who just has a spur of the moment decision? So when you really break this down, the only things you can do to prevent terrorism is sort of heavy-handed law enforcement techniques. Now, if you look at the way those are used in the United States, why would you then start actively defending those law enforcement techniques being used in another country simply because you're defending it against U.S. intervention? That's where I get a little confused. I think it's completely reasonable to 100% defend a country from U.S. intervention. But to start defending the logic that was used in the U.S. war on terror just because China is also using it, I think is a very problematic, slippery slope. And unfortunately, Syria, and the way that a lot of people frame the anti-imperialist debate in Syria, already did an enormous amount of damage in the area that I'm talking about. I mean, I even see people that I used to respect after ISIS. And I said this on Twitter, let's just get this out there. I know I hate the term derangement syndrome, but I really do think a lot of leftists are suffering from what I would describe as ISIS derangement syndrome. ISISDS. And what I mean by that is I started seeing leftists and anti-imperialists using terms like head chopper and things like that, even using dehumanizing language to describe ISIS. Now, you could think ISIS is the most abhorrent, disgusting organization to ever walk the face of the earth, if you want. But I think it's very fascinating to see sort of leftists and anti-imperialists going into that dehumanization territory with ISIS, but never like United States military or U.S. officials. It's like, that's when it starts to become a problem for me. It's selectively used in the same way that, people might have used it during the Bush administration. So I think a lot of people who are engaging in the anti-imperialism, anti-war debate have ISIS-DS to a certain extent. And they believe that there is some kind of noble and justifiable war to wage against, Islamic forces or proxy forces that are abhorrent enough. And I think that really broke a lot of people's brains. And I don't really remember. There was a lot of pushback, a lot of pushback about bombing anything from the Syrian army, bombing any of Assad's forces, as there justifiably should have been. That was good that there was a lot of pushback. However, there was very, very little pushback when the United States started bombing Syria to specifically go after ISIS. There was very little pushback for that. And I think that set a bad precedent. I don't think that the left engaged in that debate in the way that they would have classically done, which is we don't bomb other countries. Doesn't matter the reasons. That is not something that we should be doing. We don't bomb other countries. Now, so I think that sets a bad precedent. So it's like, well, ISIS is so evil and so bad, and even Syria wants to get rid of them. Why shouldn't we be? Nobody's actually saying that. Nobody's saying we should be bombing ISIS, but it wasn't something where it was resisted very strongly. And I think, honestly, we've lost. Everyone's like, oh, the anti-war left is dead. Where's the anti-war left? Well, there's still a lot of prominent people who are constantly pushing back against U.S. intervention. But I think that their rhetorical prism got a little jacked up and messed up during Syria. And so I do want people to go back more to a classic framework where it's like completely unequivocally against all forms of U.S. intervention. Drone bombing, bombing ISIS. What do you think? Those bombs only fall on ISIS fighters? I mean, that's the thing that I just don't understand why that sort of slipped away from people.